All right, digital investigations. All the domains that we could possibly take evidence from, everything down from system and user level all the way up to the network as a holistic whole. You want to make sure that you have a verifiable, repeatable set of procedures and protocols. Even though each one is custom, you want to have a set of standards that you're going to approach evidence gathering with. You want to make sure that you know what you can and cannot do before you start, which is why it's important to have the legal department vet your plans and procedures. And you have to have the authorization to be able to do those things. Who's going to grant that authorization?
Management.
Senior management, yeah, because a lot of the things that we do in incident response are things we would not be allowed to do and that we should not be doing during normal business operations. And the scope. We're going to look at the scope of incident response. Are we allowed to burn the building down to keep the virus out?
That's senior management.
Yeah, well, if they let you. You know, give me the gas can. This would be kind of fun, right? Yeah. Maybe if it's fire ants, if that's the infection, yeah. That'd be kind of, that's what you got to do, right?
You got to fight fire with fire.
You got to. Otherwise, they're going to take over. Anyone, do they show you that movie in grade school still where all the ants keep? No? Okay. All right. Crime scenes. Any place that evidence might exist. They could be both virtual and they could be tangible. Crime scenes are ubiquitous. Anytime the attacker has been there. The cliche is either they're going to leave something behind or they're going to take something with them, and it's a means to identify them. Your job is to try to gather it from there. You can use the crime scene to figure out why it is they were attacking, which can help lead to you determine who the attacker was. We talked a little bit about this with malware. What are some of the traits of an attack that might reveal something about the attacker?
What time of day it happened?
Good, yeah, because it might be their time zone, right? Mm-hmm. Right, good. What else?
IPs that it comes from.
Say again?
IPs that it comes from.
Good, that range might be able to clue us in as to the identity of that attacker. Good. Turns of phrase, wording, might be indicative of certain linguistic capabilities of that attacker. Good. And again, you're going to limit access to the crime scene the way you would limit access to anything with sensitivity. Identifying evidence. Just about anything can be used as evidence, but if you're going to use something as evidence, you have to identify it. You have to say, this is what we're collecting and this is what we're preserving and maintaining. We talked about crime scenes can be physical, could be tangible and intangible. There's all sorts of different things that you can collect. You can collect the physical stuff itself. You can collect snapshots of data. You can collect the media that data is on. And they just make sense. They make complete sense. Authenticity. Is it connected with that attack? Accuracy. Can you prove that it is what you said it was? Is it complete? Is it everything that was involved with that data association? Is it convincing? Can we use it? Will it stand up in court? And admissible? Will it be allowed in court? Right? So how do you collect it? How do you acquire it? Make sure you're not contaminating it while you're grabbing it. That's the surest sign of a way to get rid of it. How to do that takes a very specific skill set. Just because you've got mad IT skills doesn't mean that you are good at collecting evidence. Anyone in here NCASE trained? Have you used the tool before?
Really, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a certification that goes along with it. But even when you're not certified, it's a great tool to use, too, just for other purposes, right? What did you think of it?
It's
powerful.
It is.
Yeah. And the folks that I've known who've gone to get that certification are in high demand because there aren't many of them, and ones who can use it properly can really afford you both an obviation of your own liability and help in prosecution, which can help you with your insurance claims too, as well. You want to be able to use repeatable, discrete collection techniques. You're going to have to demonstrate to the court that this data is tied to this attack. And you have to do it by able to demonstrating how that occurred. You have to go through that whole step-by-step formula. The nice part about third-party tools is that the tool has that built into it. It's what it is. You say, this is the tool I use, this is how I did it, this is how I've been trained to do it. Examining it. We want to use scientific methods. A lot of this you're going to want to point to, this is step A, this is step B, this is the result based on this trial. You don't want to say, I felt that this was good, or I think that this was associated with. You want to have, it is evidence, so you want to have a sound basis for it. When you're presenting it, in terms of articulation, you want to have the data arranged in a way that is understandable. You want to either have, hard copy, you want to have a visual representation of it. You want to have something more, hopefully, than simply the binary output of it. Okay, chain of custody. Once you've gathered the evidence and labeled it as, yes, this is going to be in our evidentiary chain, now you have to document every time it moves. You have to document every time it's touched, and who touched it, and how, and what they did to it. You want to get that message digest right up front so that you can prove at the end that what you've captured is what you show in court, that the two things have not changed. You want to keep a log of every person who gets near it, who had custody of it, who had access to the safe where you're storing the media that has that data on it. You want to find that secure location. Is it in a locked room? Is it in a locker? Sometimes you can use it. You can use your server room if your server room is locked and secure, and you have access controls that prove who had access to it. That's not a bad place to store evidence. Just like in the movies and on television, you want to bag and tag it. It's got to be in something that's sealed, that if it's opened, you have verification that it's been forced open if it wasn't opened by someone who was authorized. And even if it was opened by someone who was authorized, you have to log the fact that they opened it and got access to it. You want to make sure you're only using copies, that you're not using the original evidence for your analysis. That way you won't corrupt the original, and the changes that you make to it will destroy its use as evidence later on. In general, make sure you're following all the principles that we've already discussed, that there's a repeatable process, that it's based in science and not wizardry. Don't change that evidence. Again, work on the copies, not on the originals. Use trained personnel. One skill set doesn't necessarily translate to another. Document everything, every step you take. I am opening the bag. I am loading the media. Here's how I'm loading the media. This is the system I'm loading it into, right? The person who's got it is responsible for it, obviously. And no matter who you are, private entity, public entity, academic entity, for-profit, non-profit, individual, have to follow these guidelines or you will ruin the evidence. It doesn't matter. Nobody gets a free pass. Ignorance of the rules of evidence don't change whether that evidence can be admissible or persuasive. In addition to technical and data evidence, interviews are very useful to extract information from subjects, not necessarily even just suspects. You have to inform a lot of people before you conduct an interview. Does an interview have to be a formal, hi, I'm sitting down, hi, Jay, it's the 20, what is today, 27th, 28th? 28th at 1443 local. Does that have to take place for an interview? No. If I just go, hey, Jay, did you hear we got, attacked? Right there, if I know he's a suspect and I'm questioning him, I'm conducting an interview. I may have already ruined his testimony by doing it in an inappropriate fashion. Make sure that you follow all these rules before they take place. One of the things that can also happen to us as security personnel is if we actually do an interview in an inappropriate fashion, we might be violating the law, depending on where you are, especially in California. Human resources fall down heavily on the employee, heavily. Before you even ask questions, you have to follow all the proper procedures. You can also get your organization in trouble. They can sue for that as well. And, of course, get the evidence thrown out. My recommendation is, by and large, if it's an organizational response to something and you think it's going to result in either prosecution or lawsuits, bring in law enforcement. Make your attorneys do it. Be the consultant to your attorney and let the attorney conduct the interview. There's no reason, by and large, that most information security people know how to conduct an interview in accordance with the law. Again, outside our skill set, right? And don't do it alone. Don't ever do it alone. Andy, what happens if it's just me and you sitting in a room together and you confess to me?
It's my word versus yours.
Absolutely. Did it ever happen? No. It's the same thing as documentation. Record it if you can. Unfortunately, in some places, in some states, you can't record it without their consent and foreknowledge, right? Wiretapping. All right. You've extracted all your data. You've collected your evidence. Now it's time to analyze it. One of the things you can do to analyze information is use software. Go through the code itself. Decompile, reverse engineer. Reverse engineering. What are the sort of things you reverse engineer to give you information and evidence that's useful and data that's useful? Malware a lot. You want to see how they used it. You want to see what they used. You want to see what kind of languages they used. Did they actually write comments in there? Do some malware designers actually write down Mafia Boy rules? Yes.
Some?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like all of them.
Yeah. A lot of them want the credit. That's why they're doing what they do. You also want to look at the purpose of it. What is it that they were attempting to do? How far did they get in what they were doing? Sometimes it goes beyond what it looks like, and it's actually something more insidious. You can do network analysis. You can review more than just the system or the code. You can go over the network logs and activity. Look at the hardware itself. Go ahead and lift a sector-by-sector, bit-by-bit copy of that hard drive. Maintain it, one, for evidentiary purposes and also for your analysis. Find out if you can go ahead and recreate what it was that they did and see if what they did allowed them more permissions to do other things as well, and then go look and see if they did those things. Go ahead and review the media. See if you can pull data that they tried to obscure. What's the number one thing they're going to try to destroy while they're in there?
Evidence.
Logs, the evidence of their participation, right? Very good. Don't just look at file extensions. Why?
Because you can lie.
Yeah, you could totally lie in a file extension, right? You can hide it because you might want to use it again later or something else, right? Some toolkits, again, we talked about this. Some you have to be certified to use for it to be proper evidence, like NCASE is one extent. And again, law enforcement has certain toolkits that may not be available to civilians. Final thoughts on forensics. Just because you're responding to an incident or gathering evidence doesn't mean you get to violate your own internal policies and standards. What happens if you do? In the collection of evidence, in the maintenance of in the pursuit of an investigation, if you violate your own policies and standards, what might happen?
You get fired.
You can get fired. You're not necessarily authorized to do that, right? Even management, if they authorize it, if they authorize their own deviation from a policy or standard, might end up invalidating any claims against users who were suspects. They might cause themselves to be in violation of the law. They might be prosecuted for that, right? It says that you should include technical experts and legal advisors. Does that mean you should hire them as full-time employees? No, because by and large, if all you're doing is incident response, you're doing something wrong anyway. But you might want to bring them in as consultants because, again, that's a skill set that's not normal to most organizations. It's not part of our core competency. People that you are going to use should have the training and the authority to do so, though. And legal, HR, these people will help you step through the process of who is who. Sometimes we're really reluctant to call in law enforcement. Why might you not want to call the cops?
They take over.
They do, and it's frightening, and we don't know how to deal with them, and they're different kinds of creatures. Sometimes it can be very useful. Sometimes it can be very useful because I've been in a position where we did call law enforcement, and they guided us through the process and said, we can't do this without a warrant, but because it's your data, here's what you can do. And they can actually step you through how to collect information and your own data and your own evidence, which you can turn over to them if you care to.